Ciao board gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's episode we're going to be reviewing a game which has kind of hit a lot of the top of people's hotness for the last month or so. And that game is, of course, Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games, designed by Bobby Hill. Now this is a review copy sent to me by the very nice guys at Garphill Games. And if you've been following the forums on BGG or on any of the Facebook forums, etc., you'll know that people are really liking Hadrian's Wall. What is Hadrian's Wall? Why is it so popular? Well, Hadrian's Wall is a flip and write game. That's right, a flip and write game. So if you've played anything like Welcome To, then you'll know exactly what this is. Where roll and write games use dice as their kind of primary driving mechanism, flip and write games use a series of cards, and that drive the mechanism of the game. And over a game lasting 6 rounds, you will try to amass as many victory points as possible by fulfilling a certain number of criteria and marking everything on these 2 pads or these 2 sheets that come with the game itself. Now, the game does come with 2 pads of sheets, and these sheets are gargantuan, or the pads themselves are gargantuan, and at first glance they may seem a little bit daunting as you look at all the various icons on there. But I'm here to tell you that this game is nowhere near as daunting to play as it seems at first glance. So, let's have a look a little bit at how you play Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games, designed by Bobby Hill. So as I mentioned, Hadrian's Wall is a flip and write games, and we know that all the and write games are starting to gain in a lot of popularity over recent years, and also they're starting to develop and starting to adapt a little bit to an ever-changing and demanding environment from board game players. We're looking for something a little bit more special now, and we've seen that certainly with the advent of a game like Roman Roll, which the expansion I previewed earlier this year, and also in the flip and the roll and write space as well, where we have a game like Vengeance Roll and Fight, which again I previewed earlier, and it's just completed its run on Kickstarter, which kind of evolves the roll and write genre. So Hadrian's Wall kind of takes that next step in the flip and write genre. It introduces elements of resource management, of worker placement, and kind of starts to take things to the next level. So the kind of backstory on Hadrian's Wall is that when visiting the north of Britannia in 122 AD, the Roman Emperor Hadrian Augustus witnessed the aftermath of the war between his armies and the savage Picts. In a show of Roman might, he ordered a wall to be built that would separate the Pict tribes from the rest of England. Grand in its design, the wall stretched 80 Roman miles from coast to coast. So in this game, you're going to take on the role of a Roman general, and it is for 1 to 6 players. And there are 6 of these Roman general cards, or 6 packs of these Roman general cards, each with the same kind of facing on them, but they're differentiated by their colours on there. So it's a game for 1 to 6 players, and over 6 years or 6 rounds, the players will construct their fort and wall. We will man the defences and attract civilians by building services and providing entertainment, all the while defending the honour of the Roman Empire from the warring Picts. And the player that can accumulate most renown points and the overall victory points by the end of the game will win the game, and that's in the multiplayer game. In the solo game, which plays very similar, I mean the game is effectively a a multiplayer solitaire game, so it adapts very well to solo gaming. In the solo game, there's some scoring criteria that you can aim to hit as well, so it is essentially a beat your own score type game, which I think for this kind of game absolutely kind of fits the bill. So, as I mentioned, one of the key things that you'll see when you first open your box of Hadrian's Wall, as well as the various cards and meeples and player boards that gets there, are these 2 gargantuan pads that you get. We have a pad that you put on the left here, which has got the wall and the granary and the large granary, and allows you to train and keep track of your score there. And also we have the one on the right, which is how you develop your kind of various buildings and entertainment and markets, etc. And if we look at both of these together, you will see that there is a huge wealth of icons on there, and it can feel a little bit daunting. However, the game is not daunting to play, because all of these icons make sense, and everything you do will link into another icon, and you'll start to develop your strategies as you play the game. And I say, I played over 6 years, The aim is to build up your walls defences, to build up your army, to bring people into your settlement and your camp and grow your city, and all the while evading Picts, because at the end of each round, once you've placed all your worker meeples and you've taken all your actions, etc., the Picts are going to attack, and the number of Pict attacks that you get each year progressively increases, so you have to build up your defences throughout the year. So you get this real strategy in trying to expand your civilization as well as kind of improve your defences and make sure that you're not going to let too many Picts through and start getting in something called disdain, because disdain gives you minus points at the end of the game. So let's have a look a little bit more in depth at these particular sheets that we have here, and I'll tell you exactly how the game plays. So this is the game setup, as you can see here, and you have your two kind of sheets out here, and then each player, but obviously playing solo, will get a player board, and at the top here you can see each of the years, and there are 6 years there. Now you can also see here there are 3 icons. There is a green, a yellow and a red icon, and those are for the difficulty level you want to play. So green is the easiest, yellow is the middle one, and red is the hardest, and that's about how many kind of Pict cards you get to draw to determine how many Picts are going to attack you at the end of each round. You also have a number of resources up at the top here, because essentially it is a worker placement resource management game, and you're going to get new workers and resources throughout the game at each round. So we have our kind of resource blocks here, then we have the black meeples, which are soldiers, we have the purple meeples, which are servants, we have the blue meeples or the teal meeples, which are builders, and then we have the yellow meeples, which are civilians, and each one offers a slightly different mechanic in the game. Over here we have your generals deck, and you will have a generals deck here. Each player will get one of these. As a solo player you do, and you can see they have a number of different cards in there, and also as a solo player you're going to have a dummy generals deck for you to be able to buy some certain things from there. And then there is also the fate deck, and the fate deck determines, first of all, exactly how many workers you get and how many resources you get at the beginning of each round, but it also determines things like where the Picts attack and how many Picts come, and it also things for gladiatorial combat and unique resources you can buy if you set up a market as well. So that's kind of the component wise there. Then the main bit are these two pads here, and as you can see there are lots of icons on the pad. At the top here we have the wall itself, so you have your various defences. We have mining and foresting, we have the wall guard, we have the sippy or chippy we have the wall itself, and then we have the fort, and then underneath you can build various sized granaries, and you need to build those to be able to access these parts of the wall here. You can build small hotels, large hotels, small workshop, large workshop, small road, large road, and a forum as well. You can train, you can build monuments, and down here is essentially your scoring track. So as you start to get things like renown, piety, valour and discipline, you will mark these off, and this will be your main kind of scoring round down here. Down here is where you mark your disdain, so that's when any Picts get through your defences. This bit's for final scoring. Then over here you have your kind of your growing civilization. So we have the traders at the top there, and when you kind of access this here you can start building things like small precincts or medium precincts or maybe a market. We have the performers here where you can build a theatre or where you can build a gladiatorial arena and start fighting gladiators. We have the priests where you can build a garden and various temples. We have the apparitors where you can build the baths, which help you reduce your disdain, and the courthouse as well. And down here we have the patricians, and this becomes a little spatial puzzle down here as you start to scout, and you get to kind of fill in some shapes down here. So as I say, they look to be a lot of icons, but in reality, you know, it works very, very well. Once you get to grips with the game, it works really, really well. So what we'll do is we'll take you through an opening round of Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games. So here we go, year 1, and the first thing we do is we turn over the top fate card, and this tells me how many resources I'm going to get. So all I'm interested in at this particular part of the game is this icons here. I'm going to put these players, these particular meeples on my board. So you can see that I get 2 soldiers, 3 builders, 1 servant, 1 civilian and 1 resource. So I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to populate my player board with 2 of those, 3 of these, 1 purple, 1 civilian and 1 resource, and that is my starting resources for the game. To start crossing things off on here, I will have to start placing these workers as well. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 2 cards from the top of my my generals deck here. And I will get 2 cards. One of them I get to put atop of my wall, and that will score me victory points depending on whether I achieve these here. The other one I get to put to the side, and that will essentially give me additional meeples. So what do we have here? We have the Vanguard, which says for each completed wall section I get 1 victory point, 2 if it's 2 victory points, and 3 if it's 3 victory points. Or I can use it for the meeples, and I can get 1 builder meeple and 1 civilian meeple. Or I could put the trainer at the top of my wall here, which gives me total gladiatorial strength 4. If I got total gladiatorial strength of 4, I get 1 victory point. Total gladiatorial strength of 8, 2 victory points, and 12, 3 victory points. Or I can get a servant meeple and a resource. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try and build wall sections. So that slots nicely into kind of year 1 up there. And then for this one, I'm going to put it to the side of my board here and take an additional purple meeple and a resource that you see on there. So there we go. I have a purple meeple and I have a resource. So now, or the final thing you do as a solo player as well, is you take the dummy deck here. And I'm going to lay out 2 cards from the dummy deck, because this will allow me then to potentially buy these items, these unique items here, if I wanted to. I don't have a market yet. So in the early stages of the game, the dummy deck doesn't necessarily come into play. It does a little bit later on. So now what we'll do is we'll have a look at the various actions on here and have a look at what I can do using my resources here. And bearing in mind, you know, I've taken this already for the end of the game. I want to try and build up my wall guard sections, which are these here. So year 1 first go. So I have my kind of my path cards up here, which as I say will score me points at the end of the game. And down here I have my prospect card, which I've already used to buy that. So what's my first action? Well, I know that I kind of want to complete as many of these wall guard sections as I can. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is actually use one of my black meeples, and this is this one here, return that back there, and just mark off this first one in my wall guard section. Now you can see there's a little shield icon there, and that means that I get to fill in one of these blocks from left to right on my cohort up here. And the more of those I've got coming, more of those I've got filled in, then the less chance I've got of picks coming through. So I'm going to cross that off. There we go. And we're going to choose one of these. Doesn't matter for the first one really. So that's my first cohort there. That means if I draw a picked card at the end of the round and one comes down to the left, it doesn't affect me. I can negate that card. So that's my first action done. I also kind of want to build up my wall as well. Sorry, my fort as well, because you see these little icons down here. It says 1 there, 2 there, 3 there. I need to fill those in so I can start building other stuff, which will give me either extra resources or extra victory points at some point in terms of my renown. So I want to build my fort down here. I've got 3 builder meeples. I think I'm going to do this here. So we will take that first and we'll build that in. And that means I can now build any structure that has an orange flag underneath it there. So that's okay. Of course, it doesn't give me any additional icons on there, so there's nothing else to fill in right now. Maybe I want to build my wall up as well. So here we go. You can see that if I give this particular resource here, I can then build my wall up, and it's got a little yellow icon. That means when I cross that off, I will get an additional civilian meeple. So I'm going to pay my resource, as you can see, that's there, fill that in, and take the yellow meeple and put it onto my map there. So we can see we're already starting to build things up, but of course I still need to build this wall up as well. So what I can do now is I can, as well as using a black meeple to build my wall guards up, which we know is important for that, I can also train once a year a blue meeple to do that. So if I take this blue meeple and look at the training grounds here, I can put the number 1 in there for the year I've done it, discard that, and I can use that to cross off this particular box. I'm already starting to move towards completing my first wall section. And by filling this icon on here, we can see down at discipline here, that's got the same icon, I get to mark off 1 on that scoring track. So there we go. We'll mark that one off, and I got 1 on my scoring track there. So now we can see how things are starting to build up. I got my first point for the end of game there, and I'm moving on towards my points. But I've still got 1 builder meeple, 1 black meeple, 2 servant meeples, 2 civilian meeples, and a resource left as well. Now, if I look here, one of the things I want to do to be able to get to build this section of the wall is I need to have built a medium granary. You have to move that first before you build this section. And I found it's particularly good practice to try and get these out of the way early in the game, basically. So to build this section of the wall, I need a servant meeple, a builder meeple, and a resource. So there we go. We have a servant meeple, a builder meeple, and one resource. I'm going to knock that off there. And I can build that. And the reason I can build that now is because I've already filled in this block of the fort here, which gives me this one banner here. So if I do that and pay that, that means I can now not worry about having to build this section of the wall. Why is that important? Well, of the fort, sorry. As you build along here, then up here you have your kind of wall defences. And for the wall defences, they're tied into what's on the fort. So if I'm looking at increasing my wall defences down here, my wall here, I can only build as far as I've got, basically. If I'd not unlocked that, that means I couldn't build it across there. So these are directly linked to how many boxes you've got shaded below. So because this box takes up 2, I've filled in that one already. I can now fill in that one as well, if I wanted to, if I had another resource there, and that would allow me to start building my fort up. But let's move over to this side here and have a look at the things I'd like to do here. So as you can see, we've got the traders, performers, priests, apparitions, and patricians, and each of those has different things. Of course, in the market phase, that then allows me to buy resources and potentially some unique resources as well. And these are unlocked by using one of my civilian meeples here. So what do I want to do? Maybe I want to move into gladiatorial combat. That's what we'll do. We'll use a yellow worker meeple, and we'll lock off the first one here, which gives me a blue meeple back, so builder meeple back into my resources there. And you can see I've got a little 1 banner. That means that anything that has a 1 in red I can absolutely do. So I could build a theatre now if I had a purple meeple, a blue meeple, and a resource. I don't. I've got a purple meeple, a blue meeple, a yellow meeple, and a black meeple, but I don't have a resource there, so I can't actually build that just yet. So let's have a look at what else we can do with my little yellow meeple. I've not got a 3 on there. I can't do anything on there. Maybe I just go and I try to get another purple meeple just here. Oh no, I can get a resource down here. So if I use this yellow meeple and build my patricians down here, I get a resource. You can see the little resource icon on. So there we go. So the yellow meeple goes. The resource comes back. Now I can head back over here. And because I've got this little 1 banner blocked off here, if I look up to the theatre, if I use a blue meeple, a purple meeple, and a resource, I can unlock the theatre, which then allows me to do this, which is great. So that's what I'm going to do. We've got a resource, a blue meeple, and a purple meeple, and I'm going to knock this off here, which opens up my theatre, which I can do because I've got 1 and 1 there, and it also gives me a renown point down here. See, this is exciting. You can start to see plans coming together fairly early on. So now, as we're getting towards the end of my turn, I've got 1 black meeple left, and what I need to do, remember, for these here, is I need to build up my wall guard, completed wall guard sections. 1 victory point for each one of these. You can see there's 1, 2, 3 there. So I'm going to do that to build up my wall guard, and it means I get to kind of block off another cohort space there. So we'll do that, knock that off, take that over there, and we shall knock off a cohort space just there. So that is the end of my go in round 1 done. What we're going to do now is have a look at the picks attacking, which happen at the end of your round. Now, if I got to the end of my round and I still have resources here, you lose them at the end of your round, and then you gain new resources at the beginning of the next round. So let's have a look at how the picks attack now. So here we are at the end of the round. Now we're going to have a look at how many picks attack. So if we look here in year 1, okay, you can see it's got a 1 in all the green, yellow and red. That means I draw 1 card from the fate deck here. And depending on what the arrow is on that card will say where that particular pict is coming. Now, for every pict that gets through that I don't block, I will acquire some disdain. However, if I do block it, I get to acquire the amount of valour that's in that grey banner there. So what we'll do now is just, as you can see here, year 1, and all of them are 1, so I'm going to draw 1 card, and let's see. The only one I don't have blocked is the middle one, which is the centre cohort. And what do we have? Oh, we have the right one here. So I've got 1 picked coming through. However, I have this blocked here, and that's really good for me because that means I get to get a valour equivalent to whatever's in that grey banner just there. So there we go. I get 1 Valor, and I mark that in on my Valor track there, and we're starting to increase our Valor. Now, if the picks had got through, if that had come down the centre aisle, I would mark Disdain down on here. I'd circle Disdain down on here. And Disdain is or negative points at the end of the game. So, there we go. We've successfully completed year 1. We have marked off some of our board here. We're growing up our performers here. We've opened a theatre. We've got number 1 on our patricians. We have the wall guard moving. I've unlocked the medium granary, and I built the wall up a little bit, and also the fort up a little bit. But I've got a long way to go, because as you progress through the years, you can see at the end of year 2, I will draw 2 cards out of there. At the end of year 3, it will be 3 cards, 4 in year 4, 6 in year 5, and 8 in year 6, and this is only on the easy game. Of course, those numbers increase depending on what difficulty you do there. So building up these cohorts and getting your defences is really important. And the only way to do that is, of course, have a look at where you get these cohort icons and try and build your wall up accordingly for that. But to do that, to get to those cohort icons, I need things like resources. How do I get more resources? Well, as I fill in my manning and foresting action here, you can see this here, this little hammer and this little resource. That will give me 1 resource and also an additional resource icon for the beginning of my next round. And then as we go forward, every round, and I should have done this, I missed off 1 resource at the beginning, is every one of these that's got a black circle in it gives you an additional resource at the beginning of your rounds. Had I built a small hotel, so if I'd got to number 2 on there, I could build a small hotel, I would get a free yellow civilian meeple, but I would also fill in that circle. Again, at the beginning of each round, for each circle that's filled in on there, I would get an additional civilian one, and same here for the builders as well, for each circle there. Here, over on this side, we have gladiators, and what happens there is you build up your gladiatorial strength, so you'll build up your red and your blue gladiators, and then they will fight. And when you fight them, depending on how much strength there is, so say I've got, I don't know, maybe 3 of those circled there, 2, 3, and I decided to fight this gladiator, I would then turn over this card, and I would have a look at the total strength there. And there we go, that would knock out that gladiator. So I would fill in all of those, he would have no strength left, he would be defeated, and I would get some renown, I would get some piety down there for that. So there's gladiatorial battles that take place. Down here, in the patricians, you can see that we have these kind of wall defences down here. If I'd unlocked the right number on my patricians, I could then do this scouting action, which is where you will fill in your kind of little 4x5 grid down here with these particular icons that you're going to get either from your cards in your prospect, or you will buy additional prospect icons from the prospect cards from the dummy deck, and I would fill that in. So for example, on that one, I would have this little S shape here. If I'd done this, I could fill this down here. So there we go, I could do that, fill all that in, and I would get a purple meeple and a resource. And what I do there is I would get a valor point for every completed row on there as well, and there's certain cards in here that will affect that. So there are many different paths to victory, and that is a really good point about the game. As you can see, the kind of daunting aspect of how these 2 sheets look, it feels overwhelming when you first look at it, but it plays exceptionally smoothly. And I think that's the beauty of it, and I hope you've seen from just this first round just how easy it is to play. So for a game like Hadrian's Wall to work, it absolutely has to add something different into the market. You know, if you think about the genesis of flip and write games, and you go back a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, and Welcome To came out, and that's kind of, you know, when you look back at it now, it's kind of fairly rudimentary. You flip a card, you fill in some spaces on your sheet, and then you flip another card and you get to the end of the game. And there's nothing wrong with Welcome To, and I think that has evolved over time, and I think we've got the new one coming out soon, which is Welcome to the Moon. But also you look at things like roll and writes as well, and how they've evolved. And you think of the recent one which I previewed, which was Vengeance Roll and Fight, and kind of the fighting mechanism and the timing mechanism on taking the dice there. Then you look at things like an amalgamation of the 2, which is Roman Roll, which I previewed earlier this year for the expansion that's coming out shortly. And again, that takes it to the next level. That adds a spatial puzzle and some kind of Euro element to it. And that's exactly what Hadrian's Wall does. It provides kind of the next step in the evolution of flip and write and roll and write games, because what you're doing here is you've got almost a fully fledged resource management worker placement game. Well, your actions are absolutely dictated not only by the cards that you flip over, but also by the resources that you take onto your board and the decision space that you have to then employ or work within to try and maximise each turn, and in terms of playing the resources, seeing what resources you can get back, and then also kind of maximising your score tracks at the same time as well. And all the while you're trying to think, I need to build up my defences to make sure that the picks aren't getting through, because disdain is a negative point scorer at the end of the game. So as you go through the game, at the end of it, you're going to total up all your scores from your renown, your piety, your valour and your discipline. Then you're going to tot up the victory points that you get from your path cards, and these are the ones that you put at the top of your board as well. And also then you're going to minus any disdain. And the disdain happens by letting picks through. And it's not, if you have 3 disdain or 5 disdain, then you minus 5 points. For example, if I had 5 disdain, that would be minus 9 points. So keeping on top of those kind of the picks and your defences as they're trying to get through is really, really, really important. Also, when we look at everybody's got the same set of 12 cards. They are shuffled, and you're going to choose one each round to go into your paths, and the other one to become your prospect card. The ones that you put in your paths all vary as well. So, say for example, you choose the forager card. This will get you victory points for how much resource production, so how far up on the resource production track you've got. Or maybe you've got the merchant, and that's how many collected goods you've got. Or maybe you've got the planner, which is completed citizen tracks, or the pontiff, which is filled temples, or the ranger, which is completed scout columns. So you have this massive amount of variability as well, which is really, really important. And of course, you're going to choose those depending on how your strategy is going, and also depending on which fate cards have come out and giving you which resources at the end of the beginning of each round. So you get this really nice evolving puzzle, and no 2 games play exactly the same every time. So as you can see, I really like Hadrian's Wall. I think it is a fantastic experience. I think it is that really good next evolution, as I say, in Flip and Write, and amalgamating Flip and Write with a Euro game. But no game is perfect, so why might Hadrian's Wall not work for you? So of course I'm here talking about the solo game. And effectively, even if you're playing it multiplayer, it's a multiplayer solitaire game. So if you are going to play this with a mix of you on your own and with other people, and it does play up to 6 people, bear in mind that the player interaction is non-existent. So if you're looking for a game that you're going to have kind of a party type atmosphere with, and you're going to have some laughing and joking as you're stealing resources and stealing particular actions from the people that you're playing with, then it's not this game. It is really a multiplayer solitaire experience, which is why it works so well as a solo game. There is no player interaction. You're all going to be having a slightly different journey depending on which of your generals cards come out. In fact, the only shared kind of thing that's going to happen is what happens on the fate cards. So, as I say, it works really well as a solo experience, but as a multiplayer game, it is multiplayer solitaire, and I think you've got to really be aware of that. Secondly, I love the amount of options that you get with these 2 sheets. All of the icons on there, the many different paths to victory are really, really important and really, really kind of good in terms of the longevity of the game and the different dynamics that you get in the game itself. However, I think even as a solo player, if you're not familiar with the game, you haven't kind of got the basics down, then it can lead to a certain amount of AP, a certain amount of analysis paralysis. I couldn't imagine playing this with 6 people, because I just think the amount of analysis paralysis, the potential amount of analysis paralysis from people in a larger group increases, and therefore you could be waiting a long time for people to finish their particular goes. And of course, the more you play the game, the more you'll define certain strategies and ways to win. The other thing for it as well as with all these kind of icons as a solo player, one of our key things as solo players is we don't bounce our thoughts off other people, which you would do in a multiplayer game. So if you're playing purely solo, then you've got to get to grips with all this yourself, which is not a bad thing, because as I say, the rule book is really, really good. The other thing as well, in terms of why it might not be for you, is the fact that it is essentially a beat your own score game. So you do have these various scoring mechanisms at the end. So if you score 0 to 39 points, you're on Miles, 40 to 49 a Centurion, 50 to 59 a Primus Pilus, 60 to 69 a Perfectus Castrorum, and 70 plus points is a Legatus Legionis. So you kind of, there are some kind of scoring milestones there that you can try and aim to beat, but you are going to be playing a beat your own score game every time you play this. Now this is made better by having varying grades of difficulty in here. So obviously we have green, yellow and red, and that will increase the difficulty and number of picks coming through. So if you find you're kind of excelling in one area, then maybe you kind of up the difficulty there. But it might have been nice to see some objectives in here as well, some nice solo objectives, and maybe some, finish a particular round with these particular meeples left and then score additional victory points at the end, just to make the game a bit more challenging as well there. That might have been a nice thing to do, but other than that, there really isn't a lot to dislike about Hadrian's Wall. It's fast become my favourite flip and write game, definitely, and the fact I can play it in about 20-30 minutes. I can play 2 or 3 games on the bounce once it's set up. It doesn't take any time to set up, and you're just going to kind of, you're going to have a really nice kind of effective puzzle as you are playing it. I haven't played it enough yet to say as to whether it's solvable, and whether it is or not, I'm sure people will have certain paths to victory. So you think of a game like Lost Ruins of Arnak, completely different in terms of its structure, but we know that in Lost Ruins of Arnak, as a solo player, if you concentrate on the research track, then the chances are that you're going to beat the AI on that. You're not against an AI on here, but are there certain paths to victory? Is it solvable? I don't know. Maybe people who played the game more than me will find that it is inherently solvable, even at increased difficulties. I don't know. So it would be nice to see some additional way of increasing that difficulty. But other than that, I think it's a really smart design from Garphill Games and from Bobby Hill. I don't think there really is, as a solo player, no reason to not get this game if the idea of a flip and write that you can play in about 30 minutes with an element of Euro in there really appeals to you. There is so much to like about this game. So, final thoughts on Hadrian's Wall then, by Garphill Games, designed by Bobby Hill. I think it's a bit of a work of genius, to tell you the truth. I think that as a solo player, if you were to get Hadrian's Wall, you would initially potentially be daunted by the amount of icons on here, but once you've got that basic game down and played your first game, everything on here makes perfect sense. You will start to have some real fun as you play around with various strategies. Do I want to kind of go down on the performance track? Do I want to increase my wall? Do I want to get renowned? What is my best path to victory? And there are so many paths to victory. It's eminently replayable, as I say. Maybe it is solvable. I don't know. I haven't played it enough, and I really, only from playing it solo, but I really would probably stay away from playing it with more than 2 or 3 other people if you are going to play it with others. The amount of potential AP in here, it could really make a game a protracted experience. I think, as I say, the only main downside for me is the lack of solo challenges. It would have been nice to see something other than a kind of beat your own score or achieve this score to get the particular accolade. So if they could work in a way of getting some solo objectives in here, I think it would be absolutely great. Now, the game, as it is, you've got the pads, you've got the player board, you've got all the resources, you've got the cards. It takes up, not massive amount of table space, but you're not going to be able to play this on a train. And I think this game cries out for a companion app. And, not to replace this, because if I'm playing this at home, I want all this spread out in front of me. And I love the look and the feel of all the resources, etc. But if I was travelling on a train, all I'd want to do is take, a couple of these sheets, maybe laminated with a felt pen. And if I had a companion app that handled everything else, that could flip the cards over for me, that could pull out the various cards, that could maintain my meeples, what meeples I've got, and use them for various actions, and I marked everything on these 2 sheets, I think it misses a companion app. So Garphill Games, Bobby Hill, Jem Phillips, if you're listening to this, then please have a think about potentially developing a companion app here. Not to replace this, but to complement this and make this game even more playable for people on the move or not wanting to take up as much table space. And in reality, if that's the worst gripe I've got about this game, that it doesn't have a companion app, then that is not a bad gripe at all. So for me, Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games, designed by Bobby Hill, it is a cracking game. I'm so glad they sent me a copy of this game to review. I know it's starting to come out in the UK now, and you can start to buy it from certain stores in the UK. And I think, the price point, I think it's around about 30 quid or something like that. And the amount of sheets that you get if you're not laminating them, and the amount of playability that's here, I think it's an absolutely cracking purchase. So for me, Hadrian's Wall as a solo experience is a stone cold recommendation from Not Board Gaming. So, thank you everybody for joining me on my journey through Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games, designed by Bobby Hill. Thanks again to Garphill Games for sending me this review copy through. I have had a blast with this. It's not going to leave my collection. It's a game I'm going to pull out. But those times when you kind of think, I don't know what game to play. This is going to be the one that comes out for me because it's just so easy to set up, and I enjoy the puzzle that it gives me as well. So yeah, I really enjoy Hadrian's Wall by Garphill Games. So thanks again for joining me on this journey through my review of Hadrian's Wall. This is Not Board Gaming. I'm Mark, I've been your host. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, etc. Always Not Board Gaming, that's always BORED. Until next time, remember, one final thought. If you can't find anybody to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Bye-bye.